I know you must have heard that joke before, but I'm here. Can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see me? Okay, so first of all, that you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I must honestly say this is an amazing show.
Oh, great!
It's
Thank you.
Really, really, really good. But so I understand that, like the common questions that should come up, and that we just could go through quite quickly. Is it that you've been originally a comic fan? What was your thought starting a show that a lot of comic fans were actually hating and actually also giving someone like Ben Affleck kind of a heat? When you're kind of like afraid of that burden that comes towards you?
I mean, to be honest, it's whenever you take any sort of a job that is, a character or even a non-fictitious person that has a following of sorts, there's always going to be, there's always a risk. There's always going to be an anxiety around it. Obviously, people have great opinions, and so that you have to. I think there has to be an element of trepidation. But for someone like me, it was such a wonderful opportunity, and I had conversations with Jeff Loeb and Stephen DeKnight, who's here, and I felt like I could place my trust in them very, very easily, and I thought they had a great vision, and I was up for it. I was up for the challenge. So.
And back to your comic roots, were you at least a comic book fan?
No. I didn't grow up in comics at all, actually, and I'd never read a Daredevil comic prior to getting the job, so I was the first time I was really subjected to any Daredevil material were the first two scripts that they allowed me to read, and then I went in and auditioned and took it from there. And then when I got the job, of course, I spent a lot of time reading comics. But
so what is it that you learned out of this experience? Like, is it that you discovered things about comic books that you wouldn't have known before? I mean, as you said, if you haven't been like a fan earlier, and now all of a sudden being intrigued and having all these fans coming and saying like, "Oh yeah, it's good that you did this and that," like an episode
well, I think
issue.
I think I underestimated the fan base. I underestimated how important these characters are to so many people. I guess if you didn't grow up in that world, you probably wouldn't really have that. You wouldn't really have a frame of reference, as I didn't. But being able to having this back catalogue of comic books for 50, 60 years was incredibly helpful, in the preparation process, and all right through the filming. I had all these comics that I could go back to and read and look at and kind of identify moments in the scripts that mirrored classic issues, etc., etc. So that was really, really helpful.
Well, and going through all the papers that have been written about the show, it's also interesting that the production says that they were very surprised of your approach on the character, as it was apparently different to what they've been thinking in the beginning. So maybe you could explain us what is meant by that. What is your approach?
I mean, not really. I've heard that said, but not really. I mean, because I didn't see anyone else. I didn't see what anyone else was doing. So I don't really know how it was. What I brought to it was different. The only thing I remember thinking is that I don't think I'm your obvious choice for a superhero for Matt Murdock. I'm. In terms of my height and physique, I'm not a redhead. So there's lots of things kind of working against me. And so I thought, well, if they're interested in me, then perhaps they're kind of willing to go down a slightly different route. So I thought, the important thing is to just try and make the character feel very true, very real and true to me, to who I am, and bring that element to it, whatever that is.
And what exactly is the most challenging about your part as an actor? Is it actually the action scenes that you physically are challenged and you have to train for it, or is it really to pretend to be blind?
Well, I think that the action sequences are very physically demanding, and they take a toll on your body over the course of a season. But a lot of that is just work. It's just you just have to turn up and learn the sequences bit by bit, and then put them onto camera. I think you're right. I think the hardest element was probably the blindness. That was something that was very hard to maintain a consistency around, and there's different elements to Matt's blindness. Because on the one hand, he's blind in the sense that his eyes don't work. He doesn't see through his eyes.
Most of the time, anyway, you're wearing glasses.
And most of the time, wearing glasses or a mask. But when he's on his own, or when he's with people who maybe know about his heightened senses, he can move around a space. He can operate without the use of a cane or without bumping into things, etc. But then when he's with other people, when he's out in the street, of course, he has to maintain this illusion that he's blind. So there's lots of different elements to it it was important to be consistent about, I think.
And apparently this show also made a lot of people happy, not only the fans, but also like the network. Netflix already announced that there will be like a second season.
Yeah.
How satisfying is that information to you that somebody came and said, like, Charlie, there's going to be a second one? Is it that you were expecting it anyway, or is it that even caught you by surprise?
I mean, I was very hopeful that we would do a second season because I need a job, but also because I really had such a fantastic time doing the show. I really enjoyed it. I thought all the actors and all the crew were just like a really great bunch of people, really nice family, and we all seemed to be really inspired by the writing and the content. And so I was, when we were kind of wrapping up the show, I was so excited that we potentially had a show on our hands that the fans were going to be pleased with. So yeah, you're right. It's very satisfying to know that there has been such a great response and that we get to do it again. So I'm thrilled for that reason.
Well, especially I think that those kind of platforms as Netflix, that kind of changed really the game in terms of like storytelling, but also like the way that things are produced. How did you saw like the experience in comparison to like a big screen movie, in comparison to that show where not like on other shows where most of the actors didn't even know what will come out, but knowing that this entire thing is going to be produced within one season, you must know everything from the start to the beginning. Was that also kind of like more a relief for you as an actor because you knew exactly what to anticipate, anything like that?
Well, I didn't know the whole story arc from the beginning because when you make a television show, obviously you've got to write 13 episodes and they all have to be pretty polished. And they have to be approved by by the network and the studio and et cetera, et cetera. So by the time we started shooting, I'd only seen, I think, the first 5 episodes. And I'd had conversations with the showrunner, with Stephen and with the producers about the arc of the show and what the character's arc within the story. And so I had a sense, but really you're kind of playing catch up all the time a little bit, with a television show. But the benefit to having all these extra hours is that we get to spend a lot more time, exploring the character's origin and the relationships between the characters. And I think that works really well on a Marvel show where there's so much history there. There's so many great moments in the comics that the fans want to see, and if you do a 2-hour movie, then you have to let go of a lot more of them. Whereas over the course of 13 hours, you can include a lot more, I think. So that's one of the great benefits.
All right, then thank you so much that you found some time, and looking forward to 2016 for the second season.
Yeah, thanks.
All right? Thank you so much.
Nice talking to you.
Thank you. Well, Stephen, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Because it's quite easy just to tell you that this is an awesome show.
Oh, well, thank you. That's even better.
Yeah, but then again, there's some envy coming in. I'm having a hard time writing down like even short messages and people complaining, you don't even answer and all that. But you manage just to make a living out of it. And actually just like some cult series that you've been writing down, and that must feel pretty good, isn't it?
I've been extremely fortunate. I always say Joss Whedon really gave me my career. I was working on a little MTV show called Undressed. And I had written a spec Buffy script because it was my favorite show at the time. And his people read it, and I was talking to them about doing some work on their animated series that they were working on, trying to get off the ground. And Joss read the script and invited me in, and at the end of a half hour of talking movies and comics, he said, would you like to come write an episode of the live action show? And that really started my career. From that, he hired me on full time, gave me my first chance at directing on Angel, and has just been a real mentor ever since.
So ever since you've been watching Bones, now that Angel is not on anymore, just to get still in touch?
Yeah, years ago I had bumped into David Boreanaz after the first couple of seasons of Bones and had a little catch up, so yeah.
So, but not only you've been working on Undressed, on Buffy, on Angel, but also you've been working on Smallville and Spartacus. I would say like the only common thing that they have, not only is you, but also the fact that they're very physically challenged. Or is there more to it that you would say like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that I've been writing all this stuff before that I'm now into Daredevil?
Yeah, I've always loved action, and I've always loved genre. So those are definitely the two things that are kind of common.
You're into pain, as I can see about your
pain,
tat.
which all the things I've worked on have in common, except Viva Laughlin, a show that I don't know. Do you remember Viva Laughlin?
No.
Hugh Jackman musical, CBS, lasted about 2 seconds.
No, we didn't. We didn't have it over here.
Well, it probably never got here.
Apparently.
It only aired 2 episodes. It was based on an English property called Viva Blackpool that I worked on for about 5 minutes. So that was a musical. So that was the only non-action.
But since
genre.
the Oscar, we also know that Hugh Jackman must be great as a musical star. So that's why it makes sense that I actually didn't cut out.
And he was great.
No, but what again? Like, what do you think is what it makes so successful? Because I personally, as a comic book fan, I wouldn't consider myself like as an absolute nerd, but I grew up on comics, and I enjoyed also like Daredevil because I'm still a huge Frank Miller fan, and I just felt like this is really like the first time that I feel like this is, to me personally, this is the best TV comic adaptation there is. So what was your approach on that? Is that you really were reading every single comic issue and you said like this has to be in the show, or is it that you just got lucky?
I grew up reading comic books all my life, so I was very familiar with Daredevil. And Drew Goddard, who started the show before I came in and took over for him when he had to go spearhead the Sinister Six movie, he had a great take on it. I met with him early on, about a year before the show actually went. And I was unavailable at the time to come help him out. But he had a great idea, the grittier, darker, Frank Miller kind of tone. Frank Miller, Brian Michael Bendis. And it really worked for the character. And I was shocked and delighted that Marvel would allow us to go in that direction.
So was I, after I saw like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I was like, really?
Yeah, well, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is very much in that Marvel Cinematic Universe, as is Agent Carter. And in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it works. So for them to take the risk of let's change the formula in a major way, I thought was just astounding and really thrilling that they gave us the opportunity to realize Daredevil the way we felt that it should be realized, taking the essence of Frank Miller and Brian Michael Bendis and those darker, more film noir kind of stories.
But also, like, the cast is amazing. Like Vincent D'Onofrio. I mean, Charlie Cox. Not only he's a very, very nice guy. I just had an interview with him, but I felt that he's really filling in that seat totally perfect. But for you as a writer, I mean, knowing that you have to fill like 13 episodes of one season. Usually, what it is like you have to try to tell everything within 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours when it's a big screen movie. But filling like an entire season, and also in order not to make it boring in any way, what is more challenging? To shorten something or actually even extending it to the way that it still becomes entertaining for an entire season?
The most challenging thing is to tell a really complex, cohesive story in 2 hours. 13 hours gives you an opportunity that you just can't get in the movies. If we had tried to condense what we did in Daredevil for Netflix into 2 hours, I don't think it would have worked. We couldn't have explored Wilson Fisk the way we did. There just wouldn't have been enough time.
It took quite some time until you saw him, actually.
And that is the great thing about doing 13 hours is you can spend 3 episodes talking about the guy before you actually see him. You can't do that in a movie. Also in the movie, I certainly wouldn't spend half an hour on Wilson Fisk goes on a date. That just wouldn't work in a movie. You just don't have enough time to do that. So doing 13 hours is really liberating, especially for this kind of story. The kind of story, I would have a harder time doing 13 hours of Iron Man because I think Iron Man lends itself to that 2 hours, 2.5 hours of storytelling. I could certainly do 13 hours of Tony Stark, but it's harder to do 13 hours of Iron Man. With Daredevil, Matt Murdock is, all he has is heightened senses. He doesn't have, like they say in the show, iron suit or a magic hammer. He's just a guy, and he's a guy with a hell of a lot of problems. So exploring that for 13 episodes, yeah, you can absolutely do.
Okay, and finally, what comes up next for you? I mean, with this kind of success, I mean, already second season is announced, so I believe that you're also involved in that. Does it mean for you, like, yeah, it's fine, but it bores me, I'm just going to head for something else? Or do you already even think in your mind, season 2, season 3, until they let me?
I am unfortunately not involved in season 2. I had a previous feature commitment, much like Drew Goddard did before he came in. I had a previous feature commitment that I delayed so I could come in and help out my old buddies Drew Goddard and Jeff Loeb, the head of Marvel Television. So I have to go off and concentrate on this feature. So now I'm handing the baton to Doug Petrie, another one of Joss's disciples.
Is he worthy?
He is. Him and Marco Ramirez, who were both writers on the first season of Daredevil. They know the tone, they know the material, and the conversations we've had about what's going to happen in season 2. I'm very excited to see it as a fan. So, and I'm sure at some point they will hand it off to the next people. But the great thing about Marvel characters is it's the character that's really important. You know, other writers can come in and do their run on the stories, and then you switch off and you get a slightly different run, and hopefully it'll go on forever.
So for you, it's going to be, what's going to be next?
What's going to be next? For me, next, I've got this feature, which I can't say anything about.
It's Firefly, Joss Whedon and him together, Firefly at the Rewind.
Oh, that would be fantastic. And hopefully at some point in the future, if my schedule allows, I'll be able to come back and play with more of the Marvel toys, because it was a fantastic experience.
All right, but once again, great job, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Until next time. Bye.
Thank you.